Leased on or leased out? On this episode of Driven Too Far, we're asking the tough questions to make sure you're really ready to jump into a lease program. Hello, I'm Andrew Winkler with Chief Carriers, and this is Driven Too Far, the truth about trucking, a podcast that helps over-the-road truck drivers balance career and family. Welcome back to this episode of Driven Too Far. This time we're talking about, are you really ready for a lease program? And how do you know? It's about the money, it's about the pride, it's about the independence, all those things. Very tempting, obviously, for company guys that want to take that next step into truck ownership. But the more we run these lease programs, there's always a handful of drivers that we kind of find out, man, they either weren't ready or they were better off if they would have just stayed a company driver. So I want to talk about that stuff today. How do you really know if you're ready to take this leap? I think we start with questions to ourselves. And the first one is, so many drivers think that, okay, I'm going to make more money in this lease program. It's going to be the answer to my prayers. Things are tight. I'm living paycheck to paycheck, all those things. And if I just get into a lease program, suddenly everything's going to be fixed. And over a short amount of time, I'll be able to make more money, dig myself out of that debt, and whatnot. But I think the fair question, and the one you really need to do when you look in the mirror, is where am I at today before I jump into the lease program? If I'm struggling today and living paycheck to paycheck, then I'm going to be honest with you. It's probably not going to get any easier because you have to be more disciplined as an owner-operator than you do as a company employee. So one of the things you need to ask is, how big is my savings now? If I've not been able to put anything away as a company driver, why do you really think it's going to be any different as an owner-operator, as a lease purchase driver? The reality is it kind of comes back to your own habits, right? Even if you're just putting small amounts away as a company employee, that's a great habit to be in. But all of a sudden, if you turn to a lease, and you can tell yourself this all you want, but if you weren't able to save as a company driver, you're really probably not going to be able to save as a lease operator, because the money's going to come in, it's going to be more, and you're going to be thinking about all the things. You're going to dig yourself out of debt. Maybe there's been a purchase you've been waiting to make, and all of a sudden now you have the money to do it. You're probably going to go out and do those things. If you don't have the disciplined habits to put the money away, it's going to be tough on you, I think. Another question is, how do you handle irregular income now? So trucking's always been, kind of up and down when you think about it. You have some really good weeks when you have good miles, then it always seems to get followed up by kind of a slow week or a bad week when you didn't make as many, or maybe you had a really good week and then it was time to go home at the end of the next week. Well, we all know what happens when we go home. The income stops while we're not driving. So therefore, that next paycheck is never quite as big as we want it to be. So how are you handling that as a company guy? Because I think it's going to get magnified as a lease driver, because the dollars are more, and you have more responsibilities. Remember, as a lease guy, the truck payments don't stop, the insurance payments don't stop. So many things continue on even when you're taking that time off. Ask yourself, how much are you prepared to put down? So this is where I think and we've changed our criteria for our lease program here recently too, because what we found is, we can make it super easy for anybody to get into the program. We can be a zero down, come on in. If you're hired on by us, you're probably good enough to be a lease driver too. But we've kind of taken a different approach recently, and I think you need to ask yourself that. Are you prepared to put some money down? Are you prepared to put some skin in the game to be a lease operator? And if the answer is no, then you may not be ready to do this. I think it's super important that you're at least able to make some kind of down payment on the truck, and that you're able to at least come up with some kind of savings for maintenance or escrow accounts, whatever your company might require. But if you're starting from scratch and the company tells you, we'll pull more out of your paycheck or your settlement checks early on, we'll help you build those accounts up, I'm just going to tell you it's hard to do. It's very difficult to do. So it's almost like you start out in the hole a little bit. So I think the great thing to say is, what's my ability to save, and can I put some skin in the game right away? If you're willing to do that, or if you know you have to do that, And as a company guy, you save up for 6 months till you get that money together and say, now I'm ready to jump in. I think that's a great idea. What are you going to do to manage those finances anyway? When you're a company dude, everything's kind of planned out for you as far as the routing, the taxes, the payroll, the vacation and all the benefits you're getting, your health care, all those things. It just kind of happens in the background, and then they deposit the rest of the check in your bank account on Fridays. But when you're a lease person, it's going to change, and you have to be active. You have to take an active role in your finances, not only to make sure that whoever's going to help you keep your books, whether it's your wife or you hire somebody to do it. And by the way, I highly recommend you hire somebody to do it so it's accurate. It's not something that's on your mind that you're constantly worried about. But when you do that, most likely that finance company that you hire to keep your books, they're probably going to give you either a monthly or quarterly some kind of report to tell you how is your business going, a profit and loss statement, something like that. You got to read it. It doesn't do any good to hire these people to keep your books, to keep your numbers. They're going to give you the feedback and then you never look at it. So that's your playbook. That profit and loss statement every month tells you where you're doing well and what you need to work on. And if you're not paying attention to it, if you don't know how to interpret it, you're probably going to struggle in a lease program. Are you organized and do you have self-discipline? So self-discipline, not only talking about the ability to put money away or savings, but it's other things too. It's thinking about your schedule. Because you have so much freedom as a lease operator and independent contractor, technically dispatch can't tell you when you have to and when you don't have to work and when your home time is and all those things. So you have to do it. You have to be disciplined enough to do it. And it's really hard as a professional driver because you spend days or weeks away from the family at a time. When you're scheduled to go home, of course you want to spend that time with the family. And then it's really tempting and it's really easy to stay longer than you should have with the family. Something always comes up. If you got young kids, man, they're always, sad to see dad or mom go, get back on the road. Of course, if you got a spouse, same thing. You don't necessarily want to leave them. But you have to be disciplined with that. And if you struggle with it now as a company person, it's going to be really hard as an owner operator. Because again, you're making more money, you have more responsibilities, everything is amplified when it comes to your responsibilities as a lease operator. So as a company guy, maybe you make $300 a day on average. As a lease operator, you probably need to generate at least $600 a day with that truck, maybe more, depending on your lease and your setup and stuff. And it could be as high as $1,000. So a missed day or even a missed half day of work, it's going to have a financial impact on you at the end of that next week. We keep hounding on the importance of savings, but think about the economy and where we're at and kind of where trucking's been over the last 2.5 years. How are you prepared to handle slowdowns, right? Because it's a little unpredictable. We're coming into a holiday season. What's going to happen with freight? Man, I hope it, keeps ramping up and stuff because the stores, need to fill their shelves for the holiday shopping and all those things going on. But what happens right after the holidays? There's always a letdown in the industry. If you look at the trends and watch any of that stuff, you'll know that January, February, March can typically be slower months, especially depending on what it is you haul or what kind of freight you move. But are you prepared for that? So maybe you get used to living a certain way and then all of a sudden you got 3 months out of the year that slow down. That's when that savings is really important. It's going to get you through those slower and tougher times. So on top of the tough questions you need to ask yourself to see if you're ready, there's some questions that you need to ask the company or companies you're thinking about leasing onto. And the big one really is the ability to read through a contract and understand what you're reading and looking for the small print, because I think the details are in there. A lot of times drivers feel like they get rushed through the process of signing a contract, or maybe they haven't been given ample time to read through it. Maybe they don't understand all the words. It's a lot of lawyer talk in there. It makes you kind of want to poke your eyes out sometimes, but the details are in there. And if you take the time to read it, you should really be writing questions down. Those questions, you need to go back to a company official and discuss it. Make sure that they can explain it to you, what it means. What is the company going to do for you to support you? Meaning, are they going to sign on the dotted line here, here's the keys, good luck? Or do they have kind of an overall culture of support within the company? It'd be really important for you to talk to other lease operators in the company and go, listen, was there ever a time when you broke down, or was there ever a time when something happened that you couldn't work, or freight got really slow? And how did the company react? Did they do anything extra to kind of help you, support you through that tough time? Or did they just say, hey, this just the way it is in our industry, I'm sorry. So that's a really important question to ask too. Make sure you understand, or you decide to lease on with a company that has some kind of reputation and support system to support those lease drivers. Oh, and by the way, what is your policy on downtime and maintenance and things like that? Your truck's going to go down at some point, and it may be a major failure where it's going to take weeks to fix. Think about that. What are you going to do when your source of income is parked for a week? Is it just tough? Do they have a rental program within the fleet where they can rent you a different truck so you can at least keep moving? You're going to have a big bill at the end of the week for your tractor in the shop, but it's really important that you can keep that income coming in. So what's their process for that? They need to be prepared for that, and they need to help you with that. If they don't have any kind of system or help like that, it's probably somebody you want to stay away from. That's not what good companies do. We're there to support you. And in our case, I want to see you be successful at this. And we run a fleet. We know what it's like. We know things break down. When company drivers break down, of course, we're getting the equipment fixed. We're either putting them in a motel, we're getting them a rental car, bringing them home, putting them in a different tractor, whatever that looks like. And it probably shouldn't be too much different for your lease operators. There might be, again, like I said, some rental fees for renting an additional truck, or some mileage fees, maybe something like that, however they have it set up. But it's just really important to know that they have some kind of backup plan to help you when something goes sideways on you. What's the reputation of this company's lease program? You need to talk to people and understand that, people in general can be kind of negative and stuff. So a little bit you got to read between the lines. But if you talk to enough people, I think the overall theme, the overall reputation will kind of surface, and you'll be able to read between the lines and kind of understand. It's like, well, while drivers had some gripes about a few things here and there, and they wish the company would do something different, overall, the bulk of the drivers I talked to were successful or were not successful with this lease program. So you really need to ask around and make sure you spend plenty of time researching the company that you're thinking about leasing with. The other thing I believe companies should be able to do for drivers is help with your success by passing fuel discounts through, possibly offering you a reduced labor rate in the shop. So if you do more of the maintenance in their shop facilities, hopefully they give you a better deal than you would experience at a Freightliner or Peterbilt or Kenworth dealer out on the road. So those are definitely something to ask for. Tires too. At some point you're going to need tires. So they have a tire program? Do they have a tire program where you can make payments? Or do you need to have enough set aside in a maintenance escrow account when you need 8 new drive tires? You've got enough money set aside to do it. But those are all great things to know ahead of time. And even if they don't offer a payment plan on tires and stuff, if they offer a maintenance escrow and they'll help you with that savings account, you need to know that stuff, right? So you know how much to put away every week. So I'm inspired usually by real events, fortunately or unfortunately stuff, but I got a guy that I'm going to call Ken. Man, he's a good runner. And he came on with the intention of going to a lease program, wanted to be a lease operator. We made it real easy to step into it. And he's been in it probably 2 years now. He's had got into a new truck. It was brand new when he got into it, but this particular truck and some others in our fleet are unfortunately kind of had a struggle with some of them, keep them up and running. And it's a manufacturer issue. It's nothing we did, obviously, but the manufacturer has some flaws particularly in the engine. But From time to time they go down or they need maintenance, and it's very frustrating because it seems to be the same problem over and over. It's like, oh, here we go again. The truck's back in the shop for another week for the same dang thing. So that's a struggle, and I can't really put that on the driver. If anything, I probably need to take some ownership of that because we bought the trucks, we spec'd the trucks with good intent. Of course, we didn't know this was going to happen, but at the same time, it's really the trucks we offered in the lease program, and unfortunately, some of these haven't been as good as others. So that's a lesson for us too. We won't make the same mistake twice when it comes to buying vehicles this next time. But back to Ken. Guy's spirit's really good. Man, he's a hard runner. He loves being a driver, loves getting out there and just running big miles. He does a really good job with that part of it. What he's not so good at is probably the financial stuff behind the scenes. And he's not going to come out right out and tell you that stuff. It's the stories when you listen, when you visit with him and stuff, and all the things he's doing, him and his family are doing and stuff. It's like, it sounds fun. It sounds really cool. And I'd be super happy for him if those were things that he could afford to do with his family, because that's the whole idea, right? You're out there for a reason. You're away from your family for a week or two at a time for a reason. It's because you want a better life. You want to be able to do some of these things. But unfortunately, the situation he's been put in, he runs really hard. Truck goes down for a little bit. And we have a lease or a rental program or a loaner program, I call it, for the drivers. So we keep them going. But nevertheless, it's frustrating when you're not in your own vehicle. But where he probably struggles is, what is he doing with all the money that he's making? Because he runs hard. Unfortunately, he's not putting it in the maintenance or the savings account probably like he should, because what happens is all of a sudden the maintenance account goes negative because of a lot of the work that's being done on the truck. But it doesn't seem to stop the vacations. It doesn't seem to stop, the fun activities they do as a family. We often see new tattoos, things like that. We know it costs quite a bit of money. So that's really the message. And if I know now what I knew about him back then when he started, I probably wouldn't have signed him on a truck. But this is one of those things. If you're that person where, all those other things are really important to you, and you love living like a rock star, that's what I call it. They live like a rock star out there just blowing money at fun things and having a great time with life. But at the end of the day, they can't really afford to be doing that because it's like I said, their savings and their maintenance, escrow, and everything else is going the wrong way. So he was the inspiration for this talk, I guess. And whether you're really ready or not, I think it's about asking tough questions up front, looking in the mirror and asking yourself tough questions. Because the one thing, if I could share one thing with you, is it's not going to get easier when you become a lease operator. It's going to get harder because there's more decisions, more responsibilities to make. Now, if you're a super responsible person, you save a lot, you're on schedule, you have no issues with getting in and out of the house on time, and you can work like clockwork, then I think you have a great chance of being very successful as an owner-operator, independent contractor. But until you can look yourself in the mirror and answer those questions truthfully, it may be time just to hold on and step back and put those lease purchase dreams on hold for now. So a couple of other common pitfalls that I guess I see too is the poor time management of a driver. One of the things that is a killer, and I may have mentioned it already, but when it's time to go home, it's important that you go home on time, and it's important that you come out of the house on time, because as a lease op, if you're shooting for $600 of revenue or $1,000 of revenue every day, understand every few hours extra that you spend at the house is chipping away at your business income. And it really adds up over time. When you start to think, well, I only go home every couple of weeks, but that's 26 times a year, right? So if you chipped away at things 26 times a year, and maybe that was $1,000 a day, 26 times, that's 26 grand that your business didn't earn because you decided to spend an extra day or the bulk of a day at home and not get yourself back in the truck and back on the road. That could really be the difference between you surviving and not surviving. So you've got to be very disciplined with the time and and things like that. The other thing, and you kind of probably picked it up when I was talking about the story about Ken, but it's truck choice. That's a great conversation to have with the maintenance director within that fleet, especially if they offer multiple different brands or makes of trucks. You know, hey, what's the most reliable truck I could get into or that I could lease? I know we talk about this all the time. I know the bright, shiny things are fun and make you feel good, but this is a business, and what you're about to sign on the dotted line for is an asset in your business. It's there to make you money. It's not necessarily there to make you look pretty, look good, look cool, all those things. So have the conversation with the maintenance guy. What's the best truck I could lease? What's the most reliable truck I could lease that's going to get the fuel mileage, those type of things? It's going to make you more money in the end. I think at come the end of the year, you'll be happy you had that discussion and you made the right choice there. And then maybe one other thing to talk to him about is, does the truck come with a warranty? What is that warranty? Are you in danger of leasing a truck where it's going to run out of warranty while it's under lease? Those are all questions you need to ask. That's another shift we've made here recently with our program. We did a lease operator type thing where guys are leasing new equipment. And then we had a lease purchase where the idea was it was the older stuff in the fleet that we're physically selling it to them, and there'd be a $1 buyout. But what we've learned several times here over the last couple of years is that these older trucks, something happens. We have too many catastrophic failures with an engine or transmission or something like that going down. And it just really makes the difference whether the driver's going to be successful or not. So we're in discussions now, but we're heavily leaning about getting rid of the lease purchase part of it. And I don't want to sell a truck to a driver unless it's under warranty for the whole time that he's under that lease. I think that's just the right thing to do, both for them and for us as a company too, because ultimately if that lease operator fails and we end up getting a used piece of equipment back that's broke, we end up holding the bag on it too. And none of us want to be in that position. So maybe just a little smarter decisions on our side, learning experience for us all. So that's it. I think, we go back to think about, are you really ready to lease a truck? You got to look yourself in the face, in the mirror, ask some tough questions, make sure you do your research, go talk to the company or companies you're looking at. And, maybe a good long sit down with your spouse and stuff, and just really make sure you're ready to make this commitment as a team, as a family, because that's what it'll take to be successful. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Driven Too Far. If you're ready to work for a carrier that really puts its drivers first, check us out at chiefcarriers.com.